Recorded in sinfully sunny Las Vegas, Nevada. Avantpop Bookstore presents interviews. Jean Munson is a feminist Filipino activist and cartoonist from Guam. She loves using comics as a means to educate and empower those that are underrepresented and misrepresented in comics. Jean co-founded Plot Twist Publishing, a local Las Vegas comics company, and co-founded Comics and Zines Las Vegas. With both local entities, she teaches comic and zine workshops all over the Las Vegas Valley. Currently, she is a part-time professor in the University of Nevada, Las Vegas Arts Department, program coordinator for the Women's Research Institute of Nevada, and a graduate student in the University of Nevada, Las Vegas School Counseling Program. Jean has recently published Stretch Marks, a graphic novel discussing body image and her life growing up as the daughter of Filipino immigrants. Her goal is to build comic literacy and creativity among underserved communities. Joining us now, Jean Munson. All right. We're recording. Beautiful. Okay.
Wow.
Joining me now is Jean Munson, a local hero here in Las
Local
Vegas.
yokel.
Yeah. a activist, educator, writer, podcaster, motivator, mentor. I mean, what am I leaving out here? Also the first, if I'm correct,
Yes.
female Asian woman publisher in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yes, comic publisher. To be
Yeah.
exact. Yeah. Me and the funnies, funny section.
Which is pretty amazing and was an inspiration for us, Sugar and I, when we were thinking about publishing, thinking, we can't afford it. We're not making any money doing print on demand. We should do it
Right.
ourselves. We can't afford to do it ourselves, but wait, we can.
Yeah, and you're doing it.
We looked at you guys for inspiration.
Thank you.
Plot Twist Publishing.
And now we're friends.
And
which
now
is
we're
nice.
friends.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's how history's made, kids.
It's true. Speaking of history, let's start there. You're from Guam.
Yes.
And you love history. In
I
fact,
do love history.
You have a history degree. That was how you
Yeah.
started out, right?
It was the one high school subject that I did not cheat in. It's true. I mean, math, terrible. I mean, that's how I met Koi. He tutored me in math. Koi is my husband. And then I just couldn't comprehend. And I didn't know at the time that I had ADHD. So I was just like, I'm just a dummy, you know? But history was very stimulating. And I guess why I was drawn to that subject is the human spirit. You know, sometimes it's chaotic. Sometimes it's miraculously life-changing in what people can do. And I was like, okay, I can survive in this. I can survive in this content. So yeah, I pursued that in college with the dream of being a history teacher, teaching at my old high school. I'm like Welcome Back Cotter, but like a cute girl, you know? So it didn't happen. My high school in Guam, which I loved at the time, did not hire me. And I was like, oh shit, what do I do now? So then I thought about doing comics because I doodled a lot in class. I wouldn't say every history class I took at UNLV was like the one I took in high school, which was a rude awakening when you're like, wait, there's more to the way that people teach a subject matter. And so in some of the history classes that I wasn't engaged in or literature classes I had to take, I would wander off to the comic shop across the street as a way to cope with the stress of academia.
Nice. Now, what was some of your favorite history periods?
Yes. So I really loved 1960s activism. And I loved how, you know, the women's movement. One thing that really stood out to me when I was in history class, I didn't know at the time, my favorite history professor, Dr. Jo Goodwin, she had also been an artist. She was she did pottery before she ever became a professor. I did not know that. Then one day, in the middle of class, she shows this documentary about an art house that was, every room was dedicated to the female experience. And I mean, I was terrible at dates and I was terrible at important figures of time, or, you know, historical figures in time, but I will always remember that art house because I was like, wait, but they're making history in these art pieces. And I was like, you confuse both things. Like, you could fuse the two things you love. And so I started to open up to her also about not only this kind of curiosity I had for female activism or feminism, but also like, let's talk art. Like, this, it can be radical, it can be healing and all this stuff. And so we bonded over that too.
Yeah, well, a lot of the female activism, and I mean, not a lot. There was female activism that was done through art because of nudity, and I mean, just wearing pants was like hardcore. So fashion was a big part of it, and but expressionism was yeah. So that's really great.
Yeah,
the '60s was that whole time period of activism was a big inspiration for me too. And then, or even earlier than that, you've got the whole the 20s period, which everyone thinks was just a big, exciting party of flappers and alcohol, the lack of, or the underground version. But there was, that was the Depression era.
Yes.
So there was a lot of.
Yeah, you're also making me think about like the 50s when, or like women had to go back to work while men were at war, and the excitement they got from that, and carrying, very important roles in our country that we don't talk about often.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Now, how did your love of comics start about?
Okay, so the only way I remember that when laptops were really popular in the classroom, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get a notebook, which is at the time in the early millennium was the equivalent of a Surface. It's like very tiny, and you have to like crouch your elbows to type. And I was like, wow, this is not as conducive as it felt when I was getting this at Best Buy. But I I got that notebook and I would take notes. So I stopped doodling in class. I would just write notes in a outline format. And every time it was exam time, I didn't remember anything. And I thought, why don't I remember anything? And the classes I still kept a notebook in with doodles, I would look at a doodle and know exactly what that lecture was about. And I said, damn, like, this is the way my brain works. I love pictures. I love art. But I'm not supposed to major in this, I guess. And so, that's how I really got into comics in terms of like the college time. And then post-college, some of my first jobs were like art jobs, like murals or illustrating for this funny obituary book. And I loved that because I started to get consistent artwork or consistent art gigs, because in the narrative at the time of the recession where it's just like, there's no money in art, so then no one would really do it. And then I was kind of the only remaining art person someone knew in a circle, so I would get a gig real easy, and I would work that fast, right? I would do face painting. I did everything under the sun. I did Christmas cards and all this stuff. And I was just like, I really like this, like money, this set of money that I was getting. And then I learned from my art mentor, which I met in UNLV's community educational outreach, which is not a non-credited course. And this person taught me Gabby Hirsch taught me how to invoice people, which is huge, right? Because you'll meet a lot of new artists who are like, I don't know what to charge, or I'm charging too much. And really you're like charging less than minimum wage. Yeah. And like, she's the one who is like, you have to charge a certain amount to know not only your worth, but also the hassle of dealing with a new customer who's never hired an artist. And like, nobody talks about that really bad behavior of like, yes, and then never see payment, or or like how many times will you should have a quota on things for exposure, I think too. Like, you can't go like 5 years on just exposure still, because at that point exposure is exploitation, and you don't know, you'll have to know the difference. And so, I mean, there's artwork that I've done in year 2010. So I graduated in 2009, and I saw it like a decade later that somebody was using, because I didn't know how to protect my art then, so that's the hard part there. But when we have seasoned artists like you helping cultivate new writers, and me with what I'm doing with new artists that I meet, if we're able to communicate this business layer, then there's a layer of protection and sustainability for them, and that's when the movement can keep going.
Absolutely. That's such a great point, because that's one of the things that we've been talking with our artists and our writers too, is they get excited about being published, but I'm like, well, there's all these other little steps now to be able to keep doing it, and to have your books. We're paying them for little side gigs, little percentages and stuff. I'm like, keep all that information, because if you want to be making money and do this consistently and sustainably, you need to have write-offs. You need to be able to get some of this money back, and setting the price for what it's worth. These guys, I get the artists, that that think that like, well, I don't know, how about $100? I'm like, dude, this is your original.
Yeah.
You know, your prints should go for 100. Your original should go for 3 to
Exactly.
5, if not more. You know, and I just sold one of my artists all the pieces we had here to one collector, and we raised the price. He gave us one price. Said, look, we're gonna give you half,
Yeah.
and we're gonna double what you think it's worth because it's worth so much more.
Honestly.
And they sold out. You know. So,
yeah. That's the important job, is somebody who has career mindset, has business mindset, because then you protect them in a good way, and then we're motivated to keep making. There's so many of creatives everywhere I go, Las Vegas, even back home in Guam, where it's just like, well, I'm one and done. I failed that first time. It's just like, that's the beauty of it. Instead of giving up, you just need to get hungrier in moving forward. And, you know, people are not in it for the long game. And I'm telling you, the long game ain't that hard. You just have to keep showing up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I told people come in all the time and they say, oh, you guys publish. I got this story.
I know.
And I say, you know, until it's a manuscript,
Yes.
there's no need to tell me. I got a bunch of those floating around in my head. We could spend all day talking stories, you know.
Yes. I love people who do their homework, right? That put it on a manuscript, keep it in a file, like, get it done. Stop talking speculation and just get it done. You can't expect publishers, small or large, to carry the work for you. You know, you're kind of your own. I always joke, it's like you're kind of your own church, right? You have to have like conviction about the thing you made, because everyone is pushing forward their agenda, whether it's selling hot dogs in the food truck or whether it's, you know, buy my app, right? And so if you can't speak confidently about your work or even show excitement or enthusiasm, yeah, people are not going to be into it. It's not even them buying that idea. Energy is infectious. Belief is infectious. And so they can read that. Anybody you want to be an audience member can read that.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that you talk about a lot is pivoting. And with writers, especially, I tell them, you got to have your rewritten how many times, and once I get it, are you ready to rewrite again? Because there's going to be notes, and you got to have that, because when you're in a story, as you know, that's all you're seeing, and you're not seeing other angles, and you might read over something a few times and realize it doesn't even make sense until you finally see it from a different angle.
Yeah.
And so that's what's good about having people read your work and check it out. They can help hone it in.
Yes.
But it's hard for when you especially for writers starting out, when you you finally get your baby done and you put it out, and then someo's like, that's great, but you're like, no,
I know,
no buts, it's done. You're like, well, it's not.
Oh my goodness. I love that we're talking about this, is the editor hat, right? Like, and you're right, it is a baby. Anything creative, drawing or writing, is a baby. And even myself, we have such fragile egos when it comes to the baby. And so allowing others to help that baby grow is how I want people to see their projects, because the reason why any of my work is decent or good or excellent is because it was a community effort. And like, the fact that anyone is willing to sit and read more than a page is a real friend, is a real ally to the thing that you're doing. And so, yeah, like it's an unpopular position, but it's a necessary one.
It's so, and I tell writers, I say, look, I turn into Hunter S. Thompson when my wife edits my stuff, because I'm like, no, it's perfect. What do you know? But at the end, I go, that was so much better, thank you, because you need those other eyes. It really does help. But yeah, and then continuing, we tell all of our writers and artists, we're going to invest in you, but we want somebody who wants to keep doing this craft.
Yes.
So, if you're pumping stuff out, man, that to us is exciting. We want our artists and writers to be excited about what they do, and it be something continuing on. If it's a memoir, we might not be the right publisher for you. So, that's one of the great things that you guys do too, is you work with artists here, and you help mentor them with their comics and their art and everything that they're doing. Tell us a little bit more about how you found how you and Koi got started with this, your own stuff.
Yeah, okay. Twist. So it's really tough to break into any type of publishing, right? Yeah. one of my really good friends, Ken Lamak, made a beautiful story about living in rural Philippines. It's a silent kind of graphic novel, and it kept getting rejected. Even when I told him it's very promising, it's very good, there's not really a whimsical fantasy world comic like this. I believe in your work. And he let me write the foreword, and a few years later, it got big, right? And so I think what me and Koi do really well is being able to see the potential in talent in front of us, right? Sometimes, a lot of my peers love to look at work out of our state of Nevada and think that's the best it's ever going to be. And that's where I say you're wrong, because people love something fresh and new. They don't know it yet. And if you're doing anything type of breakthrough or inventing something, you have to carry that baby, and so self-advocacy is such a huge thing that I tell everyone, right? Because in my first 2 or 3 years of Plot Twist, it was just running and driving the car, right? Like, while I had a team that really trusted me, it was a lot of communications. It was a lot of being hard on myself in the way that I communicated with people. Sometimes I was so tired, I didn't even know that lettering was really bad on a comic, because I was just like, in my mind moved so fast. I was like, it's wonderful. And then it was terrible, and I got backlash. I was like, damn, like, this is a thankless job. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not doing a good job empowering others to learn how to do it, right? Like, in terms of advocacy, editing their own work, making their own deadlines. The old system of Plot Twist was a lot of hand holding in terms of like, get it done or Gene will be mad at you. That's a terrible system. And so, even in your vein, it is wonderful to pay artists and whatnot, but I will tell any creative writer or artist is like, do the work of promoting yourself. And I know everyone's like, icky, that's like retail work. I don't want to talk about that. Honestly, when you just even say that you're excited about an idea, right? And it doesn't have to always be a social media post or hashtag. If you're just having coffee with someone or boba or in any space that is a gathering and you're excited to talk about it, even if they're creative haters, like, people don't forget that about you. Like, I can't tell you how many coworkers I've had working in food that were like, that's dumb, and now they're still following me, right? Because they're like, she stuck to the thing, right? She stuck to it, and she's still speaking that manifestation. And so, now I've become, instead of an antagonist in their narrative to creativity, to that one sliver of hope that, all right, if Jean can do it and make it look so easy, why not I? And that has a lot to do with self-advocacy. So, even when I teach students at the university, I'm like, you got to be able to talk well about this person's work. And once you're able to do that and exercise, because it's great when we talk about other people, but once you're able to get through that particular exercise, how do you talk about yourself? How do you sell your work? How do you talk about it? Talking is the selling point, right? And everyone hates to like, that's capitalist, don't talk about selling it. I'm like, look, it's not capitalist when you're like, hey, I am worth this, right? And there are many iterations of people stealing work in this day and age, right? Like, in terms of, it's easy to take a JPEG or PNG, right? And everyone's mad at NFTs, but it's easy still, and it has always been easy to take a JPEG or PNG without a name and stick it onto something, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, doing the work also looks like kind of carving in the huge white noise of the internet, right? Like, carving what that looks like for you, right? You almost attract a different audience when you set up a website, right? Like, they have to do that additional 2-3 clicks to get to the real you and me. And so, like, don't think that if you're not on Instagram, you're not going to have a career. If you're not on YouTube, you're not going to ever be this amazing videographer. Like, that's not true. Like, perhaps you're the one who has to do the synergy, like,
Yeah, absolutely. And, and as a small publisher ourselves, we tell all of our writers and artists, they have to be their marketing team.
Yes.
Even the big guys are telling people that,
Yeah.
So you got to be doing it yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people too that, stay away from friends and family. Get your new fans.
Yes.
Friends and family,
they
want
advice.
Freebies, and they don't give a shit, and they're going to support you, but they're going to mock you at the same
Yes.
time. Go to new fans. New fans will love you. And that's I always tell, that's the work we're doing, is because people want to find that new stuff. And when you get that bond, I mean, you got fans for life.
Right.
know. But those are the ones that really support you. You know, the friends and family. I know Kickstarter was always, when it first came out, was like, tap into that friend and family network. And even if they have money, they're probably not going to be the first ones to donate, except maybe a crazy aunt or uncle.
Right.
But, you know.
Yeah. You really raise a good point. So the whole friends and family circle, right? Yeah, you can utilize it to a point, but there is also contention what that looks like, and you also may feel like a pyramid scheme to them, right? Like at some degree. Yeah. I think there's a lesson to learn in the way that Avantpop is set up, right? So like, let's talk about your work, right? How you display it. Is it the back of your truck, or is it sitting nicely in your home? Is it sitting nicely somewhere to be seen, right? In your office, or, you know, treat your work as though you want it to be treated. That's basic. And then people take interest, right? Like in my office, some of my art's up, right? And then that's a conversation piece, like, you know. Yeah.
Well, a lot of the artists too that we find are at pop-ups, so they're already hustling their own work, and that's a great sign, right?
That's
there
a good
for
vetting
us.
process.
Exactly. If you're out hustling your work already, then we'll invest into you, because we know you're going to help push the market, and that's super important. You know, with anybody, especially this day and age, because the big guys aren't doing it. The big publishers, unless you're already established, you know, they're not going to be helping you out.
No.
And so you need to be able to do that yourself too. Well, I do want to tap in a little bit here to stretch marks, the motivation. I want to. You got so much great stuff that you do, but this is is this your first or your second graphic novel? This is the first personal one?
Yeah, this is actually, you know what? Great question. That is my first graphic novel. I had a 4-part single issue series. So yeah, I would say this is my heavy baby.
You want to run down the
so plot? Stretch marks it's so funny because last night I was looking at the video where I was at a poetry night or open mic night at an independent bookstore in California, and I was talking about the premise of it. And so stretch marks, in short, is a lifetime of fat insults consolidated to show the reader how these moments stretched me without particularly even losing weight. And so it is a body image comic to explore how those comments have impacted me psychologically in the way that my mind combated me and then eventually supported me. So that's the gist.
Nice. Now, do you have what's next on your graphic novel world? I've been waiting to hear.
Yeah. So this is so interesting because this week I have this will probably be the first place I really talk about it. That I will say, and I'm super thankful for every reader and future readers. You know, there's a book club in Boston that's planning to read it, so this is really exciting. Or people who haven't found me yet and have read it and haven't reached out. I'm very grateful for the impact that it's continuing to do in this world. And so I've actually had the privilege, usually when you make something creative, you never hear what happens and people never really get back to you. But I've had many people interact with me and how it's changed them and their psychology. But there are also moments of readers who've read it and then still navigate. It's not a cure, right? Like, would it be nice? Yeah, I'd freaking be Bill Gates if this was a cure to body shaming. But I've actually helped people, unofficially, it's just in passing, build better conversations that they had with their body. And so my next book will be called Love Handle, and it's about a community conversation in the way that in my life post the book, post stretch marks. And so it's still, of course, a pun to the body, but I'm really excited about it because I've had really great, I'll give you an example, right? So I was changing clothes with my mom, right? We're always in this dressing room setting, and that's a scene in stretch marks. And she's just like, I just want to get rid of my belly. My mom's already read the book at this point, and she's just like, this is my problem, right? And it's so interesting to now be both adult women, and I say to her, like, you know, Mom, that was my home for 9 months. I think you should be a little gentle with yourself, right? And you can tell in my tone, it's not like, oh, you should know better. You know, we should be above this. We read a book that I made or whatever. But it's just like to gently remind that there's really a heinous moment that's happening, and we're gonna swim away, right? We're gonna swim past it. And so I was able to distinguish that these conversations are happening with not just my mom, and with other people who've read the book, or and so that's why I'm really excited. I think I'll probably take 5 or 6 major conversations and then be able to do that. And the reason why I'm really excited about Love Handle is because now people have samples of what conversations can look like, and they can move on and use that type of modeling,
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, like I was saying earlier, this is the fastest and most books we've sold from any author we've had in the bookstore, independent or large scale. And I push a lot of books, and yours, people gravitate towards. I mean, we of course mention it from time to time, but for the copies that we don't mention it every time. And considering how fast it sold, it was very impressive. People really like it. And that's I mean, it's a beautiful thing. We really like it. So I mean, it's a good story. It's well done. Your ability to communicate with people comes through, and your tenderness and just how you pull through, and your enlightened being as you guide yourself through this is pretty impressive. And
yeah, I would say that I owe who I am today to a shit ton of graphic novels I've read. Right there, it's like being on this like epic Lord of the Rings journey, and then being like, oh, I miss it after the ending's over. Like, I miss this moment that I was reading something for the first time, and how beautiful that can be. And so Stretch Marks is a combination of like really great literature that I've been exposed to, right? Like, I didn't go to formal art school, right? I learned from a mentor. Like, I didn't have great publishing connections. I just talk a lot, and I love connecting people. So like, before coming in today, I was just kind of like, it is really astonishing how fast it has been purchased, which is a dream for anybody making anything, right? And so people might look at me and think that, oh, that's an overnight success. Oh, that's, because she's so proficient in social media or some stuff. Right. And you can make all those judgments. But like this conversation we're having, you can tell, like, I am no bullshit. I love the medium. I love teaching people the medium. I love connecting with people in the medium. Like, this is, I think, in a lot of ways, my calling. And it's tiring, right? After 5 years of doing that, I'm like, all right, let's do something else, But I think that I've been so industrious as a comic artist, writer, editor for a long time that this is the first book I'm like, well, let's see what it's still like, not doing the creative part, but just like the promotional part, which is a very different hat than before. Because back in the day, I was like, things would come out in November when the Las Vegas Comic Book Festival would happen. I'm like, all right, in production again in January, release in November, in production. I did that for like 3-4 years, and I'm like, I was tired because I never got to enjoy what the literature looked long-term in other people's hands rather than just the comic community circle.
Yeah. Well, and it's good to get feedback from the community too, because as one of our Nobody Panics, we published his first graphic novel, and it was about a relationship. And he went viral on TikTok, and so he's commenting with people on it and just going over and over. And I had him come in to sign some more copies, and he had to take a deep breath. And I was like, "You okay?" And he's like, "Well, it was an emotional comic for him, and he's going over and over the emotions and the whole experience over and over and reliving it over and over again, and it's tough." And I'm sure the same with you. Without that community coming back and supporting and having that connection to that, it's got to be exhausting. I mean, it's exhausting anyways,
right?
But when it's such a deep part of your psyche and your being that you're putting on the paper, it's at least good to have that connection,
right?
You will be going over it over and over again. We had friends of ours in San Francisco who are in a band, and they had one big hit, and I said, "Oh, great, we're gonna hear that song." And he's like, "I am learning to hate this song."
I mean, it's true though,
because you're like, play your hits, and same story, but when you have that deeper connection through your story with your audience, I mean, it makes it so much better, I think.
Yeah, it is really, we don't talk about it enough that very like high successful people, as much as people with low self-esteem, continue to have body issues, right? We need to live in a world where we think about fixing ourselves because there's profit, right? And so I didn't realize that this would be a much larger conversation with people. So I mean, it's the really tough part is there are people in my past in Guam who have reached out and were like, God, I didn't know that happened to you. I didn't know I just want to hug you. I want to feel these things for you. And I think that's really beautiful that we could connect on that front. But at the same time, it's just like, even if they are not able to hug me or hold me or comfort me, I think that it's really great that it's part of the consciousness now. So, but it's true with, you were saying with Panic Company, like the cringe that you relive, that's a real thing. It's like a weird duality of like healing and letting go, and then like, oh, the cringe, like many people have like, you should require this in class, and I just, it's me in my underwear. Like, it's just like, it's so weird for me. Yeah.
Well, and I see why, having seen you give lectures, your audience and your students gravitate to you so much and really look up to you. And you're such a great mentor, and you speak to them like people and not down to them. So I want to talk a little bit about you're the program manager at UNLV for the Women's Research Institute, which has been a big inspiration for you as well, right? Can talk a little bit about that.
So when I graduated in the recession 2009, and so I was part of that leadership program that Joe Goodwin told me to go through, right? And so everyone's like, this all really high achieving women, all beautiful resumes and stuff. And I was like, oh, I don't really have a job lined up after this, right? This is the summer of 2009. I just graduated. Me and Coy were dirt poor. I was kicked out of my house, right? So I'm like, I'm taking time off when I don't really have the money to be here. And I didn't really see people who looked like me, right? Like, so we do this thing where in the program of the 6 days, we introduce like one of the guest speakers, and they connected me with somebody who was what do you call this, like she was in radio, and then she told me to connect with comics artists, and I did long after this program was over, thinking like, okay, wow, I'm gonna meet somebody who is in the same field that I want to be. He couldn't care less about me, right? Like, and I was like, wow, like this sucks, right? Like this is supposed to be my in or out, right? But towards the end of the week, there was this one, it was called like Unconventional Career Panel, and there was this lady, I don't know if she was like not all there, but she was just talking about how she published a magazine as an Asian American woman. I don't even really remember her name, but she was just so laissez-faire at the end of this panel. And I sat there like, wow, like it's really cool to see somebody who's not had a linear career path. And I think I like that. I think I like this like laissez-faire like attitude. And I think after even talking to you right now, it's like, God, she was like a manifestation for me, like, and so that's something I continue to preach is like, the pivots are so good and they make life so much better. And every time you pivot, you are able to connect to people better in a real way. Like I'm sure in an alternate universe, Jean, who just went through higher ed forever, is like such a square. You know what I mean? Just like, who wrote probably 20 theses and isn't connected to people. And I like this universe, Jean, because it's like, man, like I could talk to anybody, because my shit jobs taught me that. Right. And so like that's really the crux of like what happened, for me in terms of new leadership. And so now that I was absorbed into the helm of running it, I actually look at the class makeup and I'm like, okay, who would actually be people here instead of like a cut and dry copy and paste of every year having the same program. And so, some years we have more psychology majors. So I'm like, all right, counselors, therapists, like these are the people that need to be here. Maybe I have someone who has lived also full of seasons and pivots, right? So these are the types of people I invite. And so, yeah, it is so cool now to change that concept of leadership for women at the university level, and also get to still be in touch with students much long afterwards. Because sometimes, and I'll never forget this. Two things. I remember it was a large dinner and I was a guest speaker in a year that I wasn't working for WRIN yet. And I remember my good college friend who also went through the program was like, oh, but I mean, you're not really accomplishing, so you can't sit with us in this part of the keynote dinner. And I just remember sitting there and I just remember just getting home really down and out about myself. I'm like, holy crap, like she's right. I'm nobody, right? And then I remember even sitting at a table at that same dinner with a former professor of mine, and she asked what I was doing now because I was a decent student. And I was like, well, I'm really thinking about continuing to do comics. And she laughed at me, not with me, right? But I needed those 2 significant moments while experiencing new leadership again as that role as a guest speaker to know that I would never want a student to feel this way. Yeah. And I've always operated that. I was bullied in high school as a freshman a lot. So by the time I was a senior, I was like, we're not doing this shit, you know? And so I love, actually, it's a sport for me now, right? When I'm gatekept, I'm like, oh, you've just given me a gift, right? You've just given me a gift to get past. And so I hope that others see that, like, don't look at it as like a cinder block. Like, look at it as a hurdle to jump forward and then bring along. So, yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many dying mind frames of past thoughts that, we're in the new age now, man. It's the age of Aquarius.
Yes.
Like move with it, because, so many people, and I was a college dropout, and that there was a stigma a long time ago. I just had to get past it, but I realized pivoting allows you to stress release.
Yes.
I mean, it's a stress to have to figure out some new plan.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you realize you don't have to hold on to an identity that you maybe have already passed, or maybe was never your identity to begin with. We're so pushed into your career as your identity.
I know.
And it's great to be able to move past that. And that is the biggest stress relief.
It's so wonderful.
To know that, like, oh my gosh, I don't have to be called the chef anymore, the teacher anymore, that I can move on and do a passion project. And you can do it for a while and find another passion.
Exactly.
The whole point is to be happy in life, right?
Right.
So
we're not linear beings.
Right.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, even being a college dropout right now, right? Because when I talk about Avantpop, at the English Lit level or department, I'm like, these folks own a bookshop, and perhaps you need to talk to them about publishing or whatnot, because that's not quite a conversation in itself at the academic level. And it's just so funny because it's like, look at who's running it, right? Look who's holding the keys to this gate, right? Like, so it's just so interesting, the power dynamic once you get past that your major or your career is not your identity.
Well, it's funny that I own a bookstore, because when I dropped out of college, it was because I wanted to be a writer, and I had a creative writer teacher who said, you need 3 things if you want to be a writer. You need to read a lot, you need to write a lot, and you need life experience.
Hell yes. Whoever that is, best advice ever. Best advice ever. That's not a common narrative. It's like, enroll more to my classes.
Right. Yeah. And so at that time, I was spending the $80 on one textbook. I would go to a bookstore and just buy up all these books, and I was reading those books instead of school books. And then once I dropped out and just focused on reading, I realized that I was a lot smarter than college students.
Exactly.
I was in the same town with.
Huge difference.
And so that's what I tell people. Look, education's highly important, but read and follow things that you're enjoying.
Yeah.
Because that'll make you a smarter, better person.
Yes.
And they just don't teach that enough.
They don't. Go into college with intention. Don't go in with obligation, because then everyone's always mad about all the debt they accrue and all how it's like, damn, why'd I do that? It's just like, damn, like, take a moment to reassess what you want. Even if your friend's like, get a job, at the same time, it's like, it's your life. And even though that's very hard for people to hear, it's just like, you will get to a certain point in your adult life. I don't know if you've had, but it's just like, whoa, what was this all for?
Yeah,
you don't. It's not like a midlife or quarter life. It's just a crisis.
Well, and I have friends too, and I'm sure you do as well, who got a degree in something that then is no longer necessary because of technology. So all this time focused on some form of engineering that now is replaced, and so it's like, great, you got to get a degree in something else, or get a job in something else that your degree just shines for you to be able to get that position, but it has nothing to do with what you went to school for.
Right. Have you ever interviewed for a place that's like, can I also see the paper degree? No. You can write, goddamn, like, freaking I went to Stanford, and they wouldn't know.
It's so true. And and that's why I've always found experience is so much
the school of hard knocks, everybody.
But then reading too, and then being around a diverse group of people, because you need to see things from other perspectives.
You really do.
Which brings me to your latest pivot, and that is the improv, which you have been doing, which I'm excited to hear how
so
that's
endearing.
going.
I always talk about it like another love in my life. You know, I love my dog and I love my husband. I love improv the most, and I think it's benefited me on many fronts to be the cherry on top of everything else I do, right? And that's quick thinking, quick problem solving, but also making sure everyone in front of me feels cared for, and not just a scene, just in general, right? Like, it's probably one of the most unselfish things I've ever done is improv, is because like I love being able to naturally support somebody and knowing that they would also do that for me. Whether it's us being cartoony people or just like in a scene, like, so just recently, me and 3 friends, we just started a troupe and we're in our practicing stage. And I will tell you, it's been the best time on a group chat, because it's not just jokes, but it's in a way that, you know, hey, if somebody has pushback, we can talk about it, right? And so the culture of improv fascinates me, and I would still say I'm a baby improviser, but I'm really good. And so I think I'm really good because it exercises my ADHD to the point where it's good for my brain, right? Sometimes, like, if I'm not working out or doing improv, my mind goes a million miles a minute. Like, either it's worrying or it's a million other good ideas and stuff. So improv helps me use that in a playful sense. And that's why I love it so much. And I love watching it. I love, it's just like, you know, there's a certain moment when we're young that we just stop playing. And it's so unfortunate, because it's like, man, like, you could go all night in a street playing, you know, some castle game or some like magical hero game, and it's just like, it's only because the day ended, but it could have been a scene forever. So I love getting back into that at 35, you know, and people can tell differently. Like, even today we did presentations like for work and stuff, and, you know, either someone was holding a paper or somebody was talking really fast, and because I knew what my body would do in public, that I was like, oh, this is easy now. Yeah.
And improv is such a supportive community, because you're handing lines off and waiting on lines, and you have to support. So it's a very supportive thing to do, because it relies on the team. Yeah,
it's almost like group therapy in action, you know, because like they don't, you know, in the school thought where I'm learning from Vegas Improv Power, it's functional improv. So like, it's just so cool, because they're not really telling you to be fake. You just bring yourself as you are, right? So sometimes I'm a shitty coworker, or sometimes I'm a bad food service, you know, employee. And it's like, I've lived some of these moments in a window of time, and I can use it now, like in a release way where it belongs to everyone. Yeah.
Very cool. Nice. So, well, I mean, that you covered so many great things.
Thanks for asking all the great things.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're an impressive being, and so we're lucky to have you in Vegas and that university. I mean, you shine there, and every student that comes across your path is lucky, because you do a great job of just making people feel good and inspiring. And we need more of that for sure. So I'm glad you're in the improv, because whenever you talked about it in the beginning, you would just light up. You became an actress instantly.
Yes, I love it so much.
Well, cool. That, and we'll be looking for your new graphic novel hopefully soon.
Yeah.
And where can people come see you do improv?
You know what? It's up to the troupe. I'm one to just like, let's do it now. But, you know, as a team, I will... Team consensus, right?
We can follow you.
I'm not going to be the Beyonce of that group, okay? Yeah.
We follow you on Instagram. What's your?
Yes, so I am more active on my personal Instagram, which is at Jeannie Jeanie Bean Bean Marie Marie. So that's where you could follow me.
Fantastic, Jean Munson, everybody.
Thanks
for
having
me. All right, we're glad you're here. I'd like to thank Jean Munson for joining us today. You can reach Jean's Instagram at JeannieBeanMarie, or you can go to her website, bit.ly/Jean Munson. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you join us again soon. The theme music for Avantpop Bookstore Presents is performed by artist Dillashu. And I hope you can join us again for another edition of Avantpop Bookstore Presents.